We have done a lot of subwoofer and speaker reviews, and now it's time for the much popular RSL 10E subwoofer, which we'll be unboxing and reviewing in this video. We'll do three things in this video. First, I'm going to show you unboxing, close-up shots of the subwoofer. You might want to take a look at it before you buy. I'll go over the specifications, the capabilities of this subwoofer. And number three, I will be comparing this with some high-end subwoofers and also some subwoofers in this price range with a 10-inch driver. And I'll show you graphs and stuff with the frequency response and where this subwoofer stands in terms of performance, all coming up. This is not a sponsored video. RSL did send me this subwoofer for a review, but no money exchanged hands, and RSL do not get to see a preview of this video before it's published. So I'm gonna say whatever I want and whatever I find out during my review. So here's the unboxing of the subwoofer. It comes in a very sturdy box and the corners are protected. That's very important. So no damage during transit. That's very good. And as you can see, it's a matte black finish. So in case you're worried about reflections from your screen, this will not do that like some piano gloss finishes. And this is a smudge-free finish, although the finish is nothing to brag about, but it does not retain your fingerprints. That is pretty good. Now the weight of the subwoofer is 40 pounds, unlike that heavy monster which was like more than 100 pounds when we unboxed the monolith subwoofer. But yes, this is manageable. I could handle it myself. And if you are worried about the dimensions, this is a perfect cube. It's 15 inches on all sides, and with that rubber feet it probably adds half an inch more to the height, but otherwise it's perfect 15 inches all around. And let's look at the driver in the front. That's a 10-inch driver. Now the woofer has a 4 ohm nominal impedance and it's heavy gauged stamped steel frame, and it's called a high excursion driver. So high excursion means that the woofer can travel and push that air out. So high excursion in the specifications, but we will test it out. And if you're a spec geek, then here is more. Kevlar reinforced paper cone, and it has an aluminum dust cap and high durability NBR surround. And the main thing, the woofer is 10-inch and rated for 300 watts power. Let's take a look at the grill. The grill is removable. It's cloth grill. It's plastic and it goes into those slots onto the face of the subwoofer. And I noticed that the grill very well sits in place and it is perfectly aligned. I have another subwoofer, much more expensive. The grill does not even align with those holes. So the construction on this is pretty good and it stays in place. So grill is pretty good. If you take a close look at the back, you can see that this has rear vented compression tuning. So you can see that little vent at the bottom. So don't compare it with some high-end subwoofers which are actually ported and the ports are in the front that push the air. This is a rear vent design. And the thickness of the MDF is 3/4 of an inch, and I believe it's really reinforced. I can feel that it is heavy. It's 40 pounds, but for its size it seems heavy, so the construction seems to be pretty good. Alright, moving over from the vent to the amplifier. This is a 300 watt amplifier. The price of this subwoofer, remember, is $300. So in that price range, 300 watts is very decent. And remember, 300 watts is the RMS power. It can peak up to 800, so that is pretty good. Now in this price range, there are a couple of features that I love about this. The variable phase knob, I have to talk about that first, because most subwoofers that you can spend this much money on, they just give you a flip switch that goes from 0 to 180. This one, if you are able to measure the subwoofer with a calibration microphone, you can align the phase perfectly to match your entire system. I've done measurement videos on my channel, so if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link to that video in the description. And the third thing to note is the auto on-off switch. I like the auto on feature because then you can just place the switch at one spot to auto and forget it. The signal from your receiver will be detected by the subwoofer and it'll turn on when needed and it'll go on standby when not in use. And looking at the back panel, I get a feeling that RSL designed this subwoofer keeping in mind some newbies, because the literature or where the knob should go is perfectly indicated on the back of the panel there. So it says that you can bypass. So if you turn the knob all the way to the left, it says bypass, which means you're bypassing the subwoofer's directions of what the crossover should be and letting your receiver dictate the crossover. Speaking of crossover, the crossover range is 30 to 200 Hz. Now, one of the main specifications that we all have been waiting for. RSL claims this goes from 27 Hz on the lower range to, I think the upper range is 200, but nobody cares about the upper range, right? When it comes to subwoofers, all we care about is how low this can go. So I tested this and I in fact got 27 Hz, and that is pretty decent with some room gain. I expected it to be lower than 26, but for some reason I only got 20, around 27, but that is still pretty good. Now, here are some comparisons, because I'm going to dive into the comparison straight away, and that should tell you the difference between this and some real subwoofers that have a lot of punch. So here is an overlay showing you the RSL Speedwoofer 10E and the SVS PB2000 Pro. I know this is not a fair comparison. That is in the $1,000 range, the PB2000 Pro, and this is $300, but I wanted to show you what you get. So the RSL, it tapers, and after around 27 Hz, it tapers down. The volume or the bass levels, they go down, as you can see in the frequency response chart there. With the SBS, look at that, it is pretty healthy all the way down to 17 Hz, and that's what the SBS guys claim, that this can go all the way to 17 Hz. Now that was a frequency response chart, but what does that mean when you actually use the subwoofer to watch a movie or to listen to music? Let's talk about movies first. When you have a scene that needs a lot of bass, like a big explosion or a bass demanding scene, so with the SBS you can feel the bass much more pronounced, versus the RSL can go only as low as around 27 Hz, so you're missing some of that lower bass frequencies, so it won't have as much of an effect as the bigger subwoofers. But having said that, this is very decent at this price range. Let's talk about music. For music, I think this is pretty good, because music often does not demand that much of a low bass. So for music, this is definitely a thumbs up. But when it comes to movies, I'm sure you will at some point need to upgrade to a bigger subwoofer. Now, as I'm looking at these two charts, the SBS PB2000 Pro and the RSL 10E, I get this idea. Look at what the RSL is covering. Anything over 27 Hz to around 35, it has very good coverage. The volume is high for those frequencies, right? And anything below 27, the PB2000 Pro is covering. What if you combine these two subwoofers? And I did that, and it sounded very, very good. So there might be a use case where you start with the RSL 10E, and once you have the budget or once you have the space for a bigger subwoofer, you can always upgrade. So there is a very good use case, and you can always listen to music. I think it sounded pretty good. One very important point that I noted when I used this subwoofer, the difference in bass. I'm exaggerating here, but I'm trying to explain this. When I used the RSL 10E, the bass came to me like smaller waves in water. It was staggered. It was like boom, 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 boom. Versus the bigger subwoofer, the boom was one big thud. It was like boom. So I could feel that staggered nature of how the bass was reaching me when I used the smaller subwoofer. I had to crank up the volume a little bit, but yes, that is something that my ears could feel. Not the measurements. The measurements tell its own story, but my ears just tell me that the bass reaching me was not consistent and smooth. So something that you may want to test out in your room. We compared the RSL 10E with a very high-end subwoofer, but I have the JBL 550p, and at some point this was on sale a few months back for as low as $159. I got this for around $190 from the JBL site. This goes on sale all the time. 10-inch driver, it is not vented, so it is sealed. Very good for music. I have done that review, and I'll leave a link to that description and up here for the JBL 550p. But here is a frequency response overlay comparing the JBL versus the RSL. The first one here, it shows that the RSL has more output. It gives you more oomph. so compared to the JBL at the same level. So I tuned the volume so that all the subwoofers are the same volume before I took the measurement, so the measurement is fair and even, right? So at the same volume levels, the RSL is a clear winner because it's more expensive, it is vented, and I think the components are better. Having said that, if you want to crank the volume up of the JBL by a few notches, around 3 decibels, the JBL, you can see this graph here, is able to do what RSL is doing just by cranking up the volume extra. And compared to the RSL, the volume was slightly higher in this case, but it was able to produce a decent response curve. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, the RSL is very good, and if you already have something like a JBL, try increasing the volume and listen to the bass. You might get some distortion and stuff when you increase the volume too much, but you should experiment with that and see if what you already have is giving you a good amount of output and bass. So you may not need to upgrade it this time, but for anybody who is building a new home theater and working on their first home theater, this RSL 10E is a perfect start. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I answer all the comments, as you can see, and we do a lot of subwoofer, receiver, home theater and tech videos. So if you enjoyed that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. And by the way, that thumbs up button is a great motivator. So if you like this video and if it was useful, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.